In this video, we're going to be looking at some of the best traps from the Evans Gambit. This opening starts with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b4, just the standard Italian game. Typically, black will respond with bishop c5. This is the main move. And the Evans Gambit, of course, is a gambit, so white needs to give up material. In this case, white is actually going to play b4, which is a very tricky move because if black just takes, well, now c3, the bishop's again under attack, and if the bishop goes back, then d4. And you can see that white has already this nice central control, and again, the bishop is still under attack. This bishop could come alive at any moment, and this bishop is already developed and could attack pretty quickly. So it's not that so simple for black, and if black just takes, giving white the center in exchange for something like bishop b4, well, this doesn't actually do much because of just knight blocks, for example. And bishop c3 is a really annoying move. Just attacking the rook. You really don't want to be playing like rook b1 on move 9. It's not a pleasant move to play. However, after bishop c3, this move actually loses due to bishop takes f7. Again, the importance of this bishop and the positioning against this undefended f7 square. And then, of course, there'd be like probably pushes after that with, again, h4, knight g5. But this is immediately winning for white because if black just takes, well, queen b3. And this is really dangerous. If black plays like, I don't know, king e7, for example, white just picks up the bishop, and it looks like white is just up a pawn. It's not really that much of a trap, but the computer puts this position at +6. I mean, again, the knight comes in, the bishop comes in. It's just so dangerous. Assuming that black does not play king e7 because it's not the best move. So, for example, after bishop f7, king f7, and queen b3, white is going to win the bishop. However, if black is smart about it, black can play d5, computer's best move. However, after queen takes, and maybe something like knight here to defend the pawn, just castles, and it's not +6 like before, but it's still like +1, almost +2. It's comfortable for white, bringing in the knight like this, bringing in the bishop, and then possibly h4, h5, e5 even to shut down the center, and it's just going to be a winning endgame for white. Now, the other trap is from the same opening, of course. Again, black is going to accept the gambit, c3, just like before the main move, bishop drops back, and then d4. Now, one thing that is a sideline that you sometimes see is something like bishop here, and then you can sacrifice the pawn back. You see this occasionally at the lower levels. However, I just don't think this is viable. I mean, again, just queen b3 and then knight g5, just like before. I just thought I'd include that because you might see it in some of your games. However, after d4, again, just like before, the main move is probably going to be something like e takes, and then we saw last time c takes. However, white does not have to take. White can just castle. And the thing is, if black gets greedy, this loses actually just like before. Bishop takes, and rather than queen b3, it's queen d5 this time. Again, the fork, and white can pick off the bishop, and the king is just not in a good position just like before. Now, after castles, let's assume that black sees this. For example, if black's a pretty good player, black might actually see this. And say black plays something like d6. This is pretty logical because now if, I don't know, white plays something like h3, now black can take because takes, and queen d5, the bishop's defended this time. However, after d6, it's only logical that white takes back, attacking the bishop and getting the nice center. Again, just like before, we saw that white quickly gets control over the center with the development of the bishop and the knight. This is pretty important and happens in like almost all the games in the Evans Gambit. This gambit is actually pretty solid, and the return on investment for white is pretty good. So if you want to play it in your games, I would highly recommend it. A lot of grandmasters used to play this. It's not so popular nowadays, but it's still something that you can have in your opening repertoire that's actually pretty tricky too. Now after c takes, bishop b4 really doesn't do anything because there's no check. So you're probably going to see bishop b6 instead. White can continue to push with d5, attacking the knight. One move that you might see is queen f6. I mean, this looks pretty dangerous for white actually, because this rook can't be guarded and this diagonal is open, black can take, and then the knight's under attack. But this is actually winning for white, not black, because white can just take. And after queen takes a1, there is e5. And now the queen is cut off because this pawn is defended, and then the queen has no open squares. If black, I don't know, takes back, for example, white can just take here. And if black takes back here, there is a nice move, queen e2. It doesn't really matter what black does. For example, if black blocks, bishop b2, again, the queen is trapped. The only diagonal in is now cut off, and the queen has nowhere to go. The knight is covered by the rook. This pawn is covered by the bishop, and of course, this bishop is covered by the queen. Now, after e takes, black might actually notice this, and rather than just taking black can play something like queen f6 to drop the queen back. This is a pretty safe move. However, this is actually worse than before. Computer puts this position at like plus 12 almost, simply because rook e1. I mean, this is just devastating for black. King f8, for example, is met with bishop a3, and this diagonal is really strong. I mean, white is starting to play like d7 and pretty much promote, and black is going to get checkmated no matter what. I mean, this diagonal is cut off. If after rook e1, rather than hiding in the corner, if black plays something like king d7, now this diagonal is open, but also the really strong move knight e5. And if the king runs, then this diagonal is open. I mean, the queen and then the rook with the d and e falls are just too strong, and black is probably just going to have to sacrifice the queen, which this is still so strong. I mean, after takes, assuming black didn't resign, bishop a3, and the pressure here is just devastating. With both bishops, and then of course, as I mentioned earlier, the queen and the rook. Overall, black is not going to stand any chance at this point, and probably should resign. It's an easy win for white. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video on the traps from the Evans Gambit. Thanks for watching.